where whole villages have emptied out and there are only old people and very young children left here. Are we talking about the predicament that a 250,000 farmers have committed suicide since 1995? Which predicament do we deal with? But first let me try establishing the space called rural India. I understand that rural India is the most complex part of the planet. No other part of the planet has 833 million people speaking 400 living languages. No other part of the planet. Not China, not anywhere. 833 million people speaking 400 living languages. 6 of those languages are spoken by more than 50 million people. 3 of them are spoken by more than 80 million people. 1 is spoken by 500 million people. But at the other end, there are languages spoken by 2,000 people, like the Bhasha of the Bondas in Odisha, or the Sainath language in Tripura, which is now left with 4 speakers. This is the astonishing diversity of what we call rural India. And that diversity you can see in occupational diversity, not just linguistic diversity, but in many, many ways. There are occupations that exist in rural India. Some of them exist maybe in Pakistan and Bangladesh. But there are many occupations that exist nowhere else in the world. Also, there are other phenomena which I think are unusual and characterize bond together extremely different parts of the country in terms of what is rural. Every year, my friends in Orissa, as I say Odisha, and we drive 240-250 kilometers just after the monsoon from Bhavanipatna in Kalahandi to Balimela and Chitrakonda in Malkangiri on the Andhra border. The ride is just 240 kilometers. It takes us 1 week because we stop every few kilometers. On these 240 kilometers, you can hear 40 languages. 40. 48 of Odisha's 65 tribal groups are represented in this belt between western and southwestern Odisha. Even more spectacular, we stop everywhere at the village market. In the north you call it the Haat. In Kerala you call it Chanda. We stop at the Chanda. The Chanda in Korakut and Malkangiri is in many ways a microcosm of what India can be. I have been to Chandas or Haats where people are speaking in one small space 16 different languages. They do not know the language of each other. They belong to different cultures. But they negotiate, they bargain, they buy, they sell, and they return home peacefully. There is a lesson in this for the rest of India, in the village art, which reflects and captures the entire production of the countryside at a glance in that region. There is also occupational linkages in the diversity, which are very, very important, as you can see in the farm crisis. When one of the things we found when covering the first 2-3 rounds of farmer suicides in Andhra Pradesh early in the last decade, it was this astonishing fact that when farmers were committing suicide, carpenters were dying of starvation. Why? Every village has 1 or 2 families who are carpenters by caste. They are totally dependent on the farming community. If no farmer makes, in the crisis, farmers stopped expenditure totally. If nobody orders a new bullock cart, if nobody orders a new trowel, if nobody orders a new spade, if nobody retools or repairs old tools, the carpenter starts. He starts because most of his payment, 3/4 of the carpenter's payment, is made in grain. It is made in kind. Only a little cash accompanies it. There is an agreement between the carpenter and the farmers of the village on how many ounces of vegetable he will get, how many kilos of tomato he will get, how many kilograms of grain he will get. When the farmer commits suicide, the carpenter starts. This is also the kind of linkages that you get up in the countryside. But let it be said, if there is a lot that is beautiful and wonderful in rural India, there is also a great deal of barbarism and what is ugly in rural India. That also exists. There are many things in rural India which I would like to see break down and disappear. However, the nature of capitalism, the way capitalism now unfolds in this country, it kills the beautiful and entrenches the ugly. It destroys the best and brightest of rural India while celebrating the repression, the ugliness. You can see that in the land battles everywhere. You can see that in the confiscation of land everywhere. You can see that in the diversion of water everywhere. You can see that in the entrenchment of the caste system. The battles over land undermine the local panchayat. But capitalism has not undermined the Khap Panchayat of Haryana. It is perfectly happy to live with the Khap Panchayat. The Khap Panchayat does not disappear. The democratic Panchayat is under pressure. The heart will break down, but not the repressive structures of untouchability and caste, which have adapted themselves to capitalism extremely well. Often there is beauty and barbarism in one and the same phenomenon, but the nature of our development is that we break down the beautiful and entrench, celebrate the ugly. Many huge processes are taking place in rural India that most Indians are either unaware of or not giving much thought to. If you look at your 2011 census of India, the last census of India shows us the greatest migrations in the history of this country's independent existence. From the last time this happened, with what is shown in the 2011 census, for the first time in independent India's history, the number of people added to the urban population was higher than the number of people added to the rural population. The urban population added 91 million people, the rural population added 90 million people. This is a fantastic difference from the previous census just 10 years earlier, in 2001. Urban India added, if you look at 2001 census, urban India added 68 million people, rural India added 113 million people. How do we explain this transformation? Please let me tell you that the last time urban India added more people than rural India was in the census of 1921. Why in 1921 did urban India add more people than rural India? Because two things happened. One, World War I saw the death of 90,000 or so Indians in the war, but worse, many of the Indian soldiers fighting in France came home with the disease known as influenza. And there was a worldwide epidemic of influenza across the world. More than 30 million people died. In the United States, more than 2 million people died. That's where we got the word, the flu. Flu was a short term for influenza. 6 Indian historians estimate that between 11 million and 16 million Indians died from the influenza disease as the returning soldiers went back to the villages of Rajasthan, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and the disease spread. Now we know that in the last decade, there was no such epidemic in India. There was no influenza. There was no 16 million people dying from a disease. Yet, the urban population grew more than rural India. Is it because of natural increase? No. The rural family size is even today higher than the urban family size. The rate of growth of population of a rural family, rate of growth of rural population is higher than that of the urban population. And there has been a secular decline of fertility rate and birth rate across the country, including UP and Bihar. We know this. Indeed, many people who keep talking about population do not know that entire South India, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and then Maharashtra and Bengal, one half of your country is now below fertility replacement level, which means fertility replacement level means the number of children a woman must have on average for population to remain stable. It means South India has now entered a period of long-term decline of population. The international figure for fertility replacement level is 2.1. Kerala is 1.8. Okay? Maharashtra is 2. Andhra Pradesh is 2. Karnataka is 1.9. Tamil Nadu is 1.8. Punjab, Maharashtra, Bengal, all are below fertility replacement level. Now, it's not the size of the family growing. It's not the size of urban India growing. It's not. In fact, there is an overall decline in the population of children between 0 to 6 age group by 5 million less than 2001 census. So it's not population growth that accounts for urban India growing more. What is it? Migrations. There are two kinds of towns in the census. There is the statutory town. Tiru would be a statutory town, meaning an evolved town, a fully evolved town with all the paraphernalia of municipal corporation, of fire brigade, college, library. That is one kind of town in the census. The other kind of town in the census is called the census town. Census town is an arbitrary breakdown of 5 or 6 villages. When agriculture collapses, they become a census town. The definition of census town is population of more than 5,000, density of more than 400 per square kilometer, and less than 25% of the male workforce is in agriculture. Now, if you look at the 2011 census, statutory towns have not grown. They are stagnating and declining. But census towns, the arbitrary towns brought about by the collapse of agriculture, those have grown by 3 times. Threefold the census towns have increased as more and more people desert the villages. Consequently, whole villages today have collapsed into the urban periphery. Whole villages you can find in Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, where there are only old people left behind, as the able-bodied have left in search of work. Now, also very interesting, which are the states where this has happened the most? The growth of census town, arbitrary town. The 3 states which has happened most: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. The same 3 states are number 1, 2 and 3 accused in the agrarian crisis. The states' mass migration, distress migration and agrarian crisis go hand in hand. Worst amongst the states in India for farmer suicide, Maharashtra. Second worst, Karnataka. Third worst, Andhra Pradesh. These are the states showing the highest growth of arbitrary shanty census towns. And these are the states showing the highest migrations within themselves and outside, apart from UP and Bihar. So this massive migration is driven that way. Why are people leaving the countryside? It is not correct to say that people are leaving the village for the city. That is not the only migration. There is village to village migration. searching for work. There is village to town migration, searching for work. There is town to town migration, looking for employment. There is village to city migration, looking for employment. There is even urban to rural migration because of the inability to survive in the urban agglomerations. You can see that in Vidarbha in Maharashtra. Why are people leaving? The National Sample Survey of the Government of India, the largest data collection agency, did a survey which shows 40% of farmers want to quit agriculture. Indeed, there is another figure from the 2001 census that is even more telling. We do not have the new figure for 2011 of the number of farmers in the country, but the 2001 census tells us that between 1991 and 2001, 7.5 million, 75 lakh peasants quit agriculture for good, main workers. That is, people who are more than 6 months in farming, that is, people who are dependent on farming. 7.5 million people quit agriculture because agriculture collapsed. When 7.5 million people quit agriculture in 10 years, it means on average 2,000 farmers are leaving agriculture forever. That is also telling, and then it is also happening in terms of lakhs, if not millions of acres shifting from food crop to cash crop. Food crop to cash crop. Cash crop employs far fewer people on the land. Food crop employs far more people. We are heading for a gigantic food crisis. The